So good afternoon, everyone, and my thanks to IFPRI. Thank you, I'd appreciate that. My thanks to IFPRI for including me in the next Harvest 2 survey, and I'm really happy to present our findings in South Africa here. And I want to start at the end. Our conclusion from South Africa was that the next Harvest 2 survey data shows that South Africa has reached a mature phase in its application of biotechnology for agricultural research and development. And I want to present those data to support that fact. So historically, if we just look at a timeline in South Africa, it is 36 years since academics in South Africa started to work on microbial transformations. It's 26 years since a South African public research organization genetically transformed the first plant in Africa. And it's 26 years since South Africa received, the South African government received the first application to run a field trial with a genetically modified organism. And so in this survey, we went in 2013 to review the current status of agricultural biotechnology, research and development, and also the policies there to encourage the use of this technology. So if I start with the policies, there has been a flurry of review and renewal of policy in South Africa over the last 10 years. And if I pull out the policies that have had the biggest impact on ag biotech R&D, I have to start with the Biotechnology Strategy 2001, which served its purpose and enabled the integration of biotechnology into all fields of agricultural research and development. And in fact, it has now been replaced. And in January 2014, the biotechnology strategy was replaced by a bioeconomy strategy. And what the government is saying is we've now integrated this technology. Now we need to make sure that the country is gaining economic benefit from this technology. And the bioeconomy strategy is designed to move these products into the hands of the local economy. The second piece of legislation, which I think is going to have a very big impact, is the Intellectual Property Rights from Publicly Funded Research Act. And it's exactly what it says. It's to make available all public R&D products that are not being used. So there's an audit of all the publicly produced R&D products, and they are now being offered to anybody who would like to develop them into products for the sake of the economy. And this act is teamed with another act called the Intellectual Innovation Act. And this act has created an agency called the Technology Innovation Agency, which has the mandate to audit all the public sector products and then to work with public-private partnerships or individuals or anybody who would like to use these products and move them into the economy. And then finally, on the area of policy, the country has a functioning biosafety regulatory process. If we then look at the status of research and development, there are 94 facilities in 19 institutions that are registered to carry out genetic modification work in South Africa. And in 2013, 52 of these facilities had active ag biotech R&D projects, of which there were over 700 projects. However, it was really interesting to note that not all of this transgenic work is geared towards making GMOs. In fact, most of this work is being used for basic research. The transformations are being used to study organisms, to look at systematics, to investigate genes, to find useful regulatory elements, and to understand gene functions. Where there is GM crop development in the public sector, this is directly linked to industry. And so the GM crop development is now linked to a pull from industry. We want this product. If I look at the institutions, first of all on the public sector side, the major player in public sector agricultural R&D is the Agricultural Research Council. This organization works in animal, plant, and microbial R&D. They have 11 research institutes spread around the country, 2,300 plus employees, and over 650 R&D projects that apply biotechnology tools. And they had an operational budget in 2013 of $110 million US. And this money comes from government. That was another finding of the study, is probably 98, 99% of this funding comes from the local government. In addition to the Agricultural Research Council, there's more public sector research being carried out on what are called platforms. There's a platform for veterinary research, vaccine development, forestry, aquaculture, crop improvement, and the omics, all the genomics. There's also a public sector biosafety platform, which is funded by the government to help public sector researchers meet their commitments under the Biosafety Act to stay compliant with the regulations. If we look at the private sector in South Africa, we found 17 private sector groups that were active in agricultural biotechnology and development. And the products that they were working with included crops, other non-crop plants, microbial products, animal cloning, both in wildlife and in livestock, and molecular tools. And we found one NGO that works specifically with smallholder farmers, and they run farmer participatory trials with the approved GM crops in the country to help farmers determine which of these are appropriate for their growing environments. If we looked at, well, when we looked at GM product deployment, we discovered that South Africa, the South African government, has approved 16 GM crop events for general use in the country. These events are in maize, soybean, and cotton, and all 16 are derived from technology transfer into the country by the private sector. We also noted that there has been ready adoption of these 16 varieties by local farmers, and in 2012, 2.9 million hectares of GM crops were grown in South Africa. In addition to these approvals that allow farmers to grow these crops and consumers to eat them and use them, the South African government has also approved 43 GM events in soybeans, canola, cotton, and rice, purely for import. This is import for food and feed processing. And I mention this because it's important, because these approvals prevent trade disruptions. If the government is proactive in approving these events that come from countries that are growing them, it means there's no disruption in trade as commodities are imported. It was noted in the study that there was very little effective transfer of ag biotechnology products out of the public sector and into product deployment. This was one of the major findings. And it is believed that this intellectual property rights from Publicly Funded Research Act and the development of the Technology Innovation Agency working together will help to address some of this block in the movement of products to farmers. So what were the challenges? I've pulled out 4. The government, the Department of Science and Technology, has set itself the target of raising funding for R&D to 2% of the ag GDP. That's going to be a challenge. Under the new Bioeconomy Act, the Department of Science and Technology is tasked with coordinating agricultural R&D across many ministries who are involved. That's going to be a challenge. There needs to be more deployment of new products to farmers and to the public. And part of the genomics platforms is that there's a huge volume of bioinformatic data being collected in South Africa, huge storage capacity, but I could not find any strategy on how this data is going to be deployed into new products. So we're sort of in the process of collecting data, but nobody's really mining that data to find the products that are going to grow the economy, be useful to the country. So what were the primary findings of the survey? As I started with, we believe South Africa's ag biotech R&D has entered a mature phase, and this can be supported by the following observations. The public sector ag biotech researchers we spoke to were not constrained by human capacity or their access to human capacity, access to funding, or by infrastructure. There was no resource constraint that was identified. Most of the R&D funding comes from sustained and growing government commitment to R&D in the country. Policies have been implemented to enable an environment for deployment of agricultural biotechnology products. The biotechnology tools that we surveyed have permeated all aspects of agricultural research. We've also found that GM technology has diversified from the Next Harvest 1 survey into biopharmaceuticals and into the processing industry as well. GM crops are available for farmers, and they are widely adopted by farmers. And we found that the private sector commitment to ag biotech R&D is increasing and diversifying, and that the government has replaced its early suspicion of the private sector with new efforts to encourage public-private partnerships. A lot of dialogue is happening between the private sector and government to try and get the maximum benefit out of this technology. What are our recommendations? Well, South Africa needs to hold to its commitment to raise R&D funding to 2% of the agricultural GDP. This will make a huge difference and maintain that continued and sustained funding for this technology. We felt that the Agricultural Research Council needs to increase its visibility of the ag biotech work it's doing and work on deployment to get these products out to farmers. In the biosafety office in government, there's a feeling that there needs to be more transparency in decision making, and there could be improved efficiency in the processing of biosafety applications. And finally, there needs to be a concerted effort to make sure that the agricultural biotech products are deployed in a way that will build the economy, the country, and help consumers and end users. Thank you.